Hi, this is Rick again for EDU Mobile. Now we're going to talk about optionals in Swift. Optionals are a way, briefly, to protect against an uninitialized variable. So we already know in Swift all variables and constants, too, must have a value before they're used. If we want to compare a variable to some other value, we need to have a value for the variable. But the syntax allows for something like var age as an int, for example, without defining the value of the variable in the declaration. The value of age will be, at this point, an undefined int, but it's going to be of int type until it is assigned. This is very important because in Swift we can't check or use the value of an undefined variable. Can't be done. Let's take a step back and look at Objective-C for just a moment. If you have experience with Objective-C, you know that if you check the value of an object that is uncreated or uninitialized, it will return nil. Nil is a special value in Objective-C. It means the object that is not an object, but it doesn't quite mean nothing. Nil is actually kind of a sidestep around the fact that there isn't anything there. So in Objective-C, we can check against nil to see if the object has been initialized. If it hasn't been initialized, we can go ahead and instantiate it. This is called lazy instantiation in Objective-C. In Swift, we have lazy instantiation as well, but we do it in a different way. In Swift, the value nil is nothing. It is not the object that is not an object. It is nothing. And we can't do what we would do in Objective-C, for instance. So to declare a variable that will be defined later, we can use a question mark after the type. And this says this is an integer that may contain an int value or may contain nothing at all. So this is an optional. This is an optional int type. It is not the same as an int type. An int type says my value will be an integer and I will not consider the possibility that the value of age may be nil. Int question mark is an optional int type, and this says my value will either be an int or a nil. An optional type may be checked against nil to see if it contains a value. So we can look at if age is equal to nil, do something, maybe instantiate it. Okay. So I know that this is a little bit crazy right now, but hopefully it'll become clearer as we go along. So what is the value of an optional type? Well, if the optional contains no value, its value will be nil. But if the optional contains a value, its value will be expressed as optional with that value. So let's say we set up an age, as we had before, as an optional int. If age is equal to nil, we can do this now because we have the question mark. This is not an int type, it is an optional type of type int. If age is equal to nil, we can go ahead and give a value to age. But if we print line age, it will be nil at this point. When we assign it, it will be expressed in our print line age as optional 30. Well, that's great, except for one thing. A value of optional 30 is not the same as an integer value of 30 because an int optional type isn't the same type as an int type. So we need a way to get to that 30, not optional 30. So we need to be able to unwrap it. The bang operator, the exclamation point operator, unwraps an optional. So here, if we assign an int optional to 42, this would be expressed internally as optional 42. If we printed out that value without using a bang operator, we would see optional 42. But if we print line number bang, we see 42. We are explicitly unwrapping the optional in the sense that this is an optional int type, and we're going to unwrap it by using the bang operator. This form is called explicit unwrapping of an optional. However, if we try to explicitly unwrap a nil value in our code, we'll still get a runtime error, because the runtime error will say, I can't unwrap, basically, an optional value if the value of the optional is nil. So how do we get around that? Well, that was explicit unwrapping. Now, implicit unwrapping says we want the unwrapped optional in all cases where it's used. So var age int bang, this is still an optional int. It's exactly the same kind of optional int, but we're prefacing the whole kind of procedure with the idea that I don't want to see optional 30, I want to see 30. So now, when we get down to print line age, we see 30, not optional parent 30. If age were equal to nil, and when we printed it, we would see nil, not optional nil. And this is implicit unwrapping because the unwrapping is implied in the declaration. Implicit, implied. So we can check the values of optionals. We can say if some optional equal nil. We can also use optional binding to check if a value exists and assign it kind of in one step for use in an if construct. So here we have a variable age as an int. Then we assign age equal to 25. And then we have this optional binding. If let my age equal age. Let my age equal age, of course, is going to assign 25 to my age. Actually, it's going to assign optional 25 to my age. This does not return a bool. How does that work in an if statement? The answer is it really doesn't. The best way to think about this is not an if statement with an assignment in it. This is an if-let statement. So think of if-let as being one kind of statement where we're doing optional binding. By the way, because it's one statement, there's no way to reverse the logic in one statement. So we can't say if not let my age equal age and reverse the logic. It has to be if let my age equal age. So if let returns Boolean, and then if the Boolean is true, we print line my age, and that gives us 25. Now notice we're printing line my age bang because int, the age was declared to be of optional type int with the question mark. We're not performing implicit unwrapping. We're performing explicit unwrapping in the print line. Otherwise, if let my age equal age evaluates false, then age is an optional containing the value of nil, else we go ahead and assign age. And then we can print it out later or do something else with it, which we would do. And this is the case here. If we comment out age, the age assignment, then age is equal to optional 30 would be printed here. We use optional binding to check if a value exists and assign it to a constant for use in an if-let construct. Thank you very much.